This might be a really hot take, but Mesa's good. Mesa's been one of the community's most go-to frames for room clearing over the years since she's been released. There was a point where she was probably the strongest frame in the entire game. Though that time might have passed and metas have changed, she's still been very relevant and has seen a lot of use. It also seems that almost every single update, there seems to be a buff to her. Same thing with like Saren, Mirage, Nova, all those frames, Korra as well. Frames that are exceedingly strong just constantly get stronger, and then frames like Oberon are left in the dust. Despite all of that, and there already being tons of builds for this frame, I'd still like to give my own rendition on them because they are one of my favorites, and also I just did a sick fashion for them, so I've been playing them a lot. This build has a lot of moving pieces that come together to make a very strong Mesa build. A lot of them are probably known, but there are some new stuff that came out that I think benefit this build a lot, like the armor changes and stuff, and I haven't really seen a Mesa build since the armor changes and the scaling and stuff. She hits a lot harder now. I hope you enjoy. Starting with Mesa's first ability, Ballistic Battery. This ability is secretly very strong if you use Ballistic Bullseye, which gives you a flat critical chance buff whenever you use a weapon with it. This is only strong with a couple weapons, but most notably the Ceto. Here's a build for that real quick, and here's the Ceto. Pretty much you just charge it up and then you have a part. After the Pocket God Particle, there's Shooting Gallery. This is a small damage buff, but most importantly, it is a CC ability, and one of the most underrated CC abilities in the entire game. Pretty much enemies can't shoot at you while you use it. It's really good. It's like a 30-meter radius whenever you put some range on it. It also has an augment for it that makes it radial blind as well, and I think it's actually better than radial blind because radial blind has a LOS check, and I'm pretty sure this doesn't. Very strong ability, very underrated, and it's a helmet as well, so you can put it on squishy frames, and it helps them survive very well. Her 3 is just a really good damage reduction ability. It keeps her safe, and it staggers enemies. If they shoot at you, the bullet will ricochet and hit them back. But if you get meleeed, you take the regular melee damage. Same thing for explosives. Moving on to Peacemaker, If you're a fan of nuclear bombs, you'll like this ability. Pretty much it just shoots everything within its circle that constantly gets more narrow and narrow, and the damage goes up as it does that. It is incredibly strong in base steel path. It does fall off a little bit, like around level 1000, but you know, death by 1,000 cuts. You can just keep on cutting and cutting and cutting, and you know, you can get to level cap with her. It is just not recommended because it requires a lot of setup. It's a incredible ability for pretty much everything else in the game, and it's what makes Mesa Mesa. With all that said, King Von has one weakness, and that is enemies being way too close. If you're too close, Peacemakers can't track properly, so you need to back up a little bit. Like there almost died because the enemy was just too close and they're doing melee damage. Despite that weakness, it's an incredible ability. It also does have an augment for it called Waltz. I personally don't like this augment because I can just bullet jump and pretty much do the exact same thing, so I kind of find it unnecessary. You can use it if you want, but I'd prefer to just have Prime Sure-Footed for that huge DPS increase. You could use yellow shards though to speed up your roll while you're in Mesa's Waltz, and that can make it pretty fast. But I prefer having, you know, dynamic movement where I can go pretty much anywhere. I think that's enough explanation of this character. Very good character. This is how you 3D print a switch. Alright, getting into the build. We're using Combat Discipline alongside Arcane Avenger so that we can get pretty much guaranteed crits at all times. Once all our crit stuff is stacked up, we should have guaranteed yellows and very, very common orange crits. Though because I'm not using maxed out crit shards, we are not going to be seeing red crits, unfortunately. However, that is an investment that I am not willing to do. Prime Sure-Footed, of course, for that huge DPS increase. Augur Reach. So Augur Reach and Archon Stretch are here. I'll explain why we're using Archon Stretch in a moment. Shooting Gallery is incredibly underrated and can do a lot on keeping you alive, and having a bit of range can help a lot with that. Alongside the angle with the field of view of Peacemaker, just allows you to shoot more enemies pretty much. So that's why having at least like above 100 range is a little bit important. We're using Narrow-Minded for some duration. I'm using a 2 from the top just so that I can get 200 duration, but not completely nuke my my range, because if I were to use a fully ranked one, here it is, I would dip a lot. So I'd rather this, and you don't really feel that much of a difference in duration from the 2 from the top to the max one. Then we're using Transient Fortitude for some more strength. This counteracts the negative quite a bit. You're not going to feel that much of a difference, but you are going to feel the strength. Adaptation, of course, because Mesa, it's not really a frame you're going to be using for like 1,000+ levels, so using health tanking or shield tanking is a viable strategy for this frame, because this isn't the type of frame you'd bring into those types of content anyways. We got Prime Flow, of course, for a larger energy pool. We got Primed Continuity for a little bit more duration, just to push us to 200%. Back to Archon Stretch. The reason why we're using this is because of our companion. On our companion, we have Shocking Claws, and that, with the viral quills from the Panzer, can actually proc Archon Stretch for some reason, even though it doesn't do any electric damage, but for some reason, because it has on the melee, it counts for this. I'm not going to question it. It's just really comfy energy sustain. Precision Intensify, so we can get a larger multiplier on the Peacemaker without nuking our efficiency. You could run Blind Rage on here if you want more damage from Nourish and also the energy sustain. However, I just find it incredibly uncomfortable and completely unnecessary. You pretty much get the same damage from Precision Intensify. The most important arcane here is Arcane Velocity. It makes us shoot incredibly quickly with Mesa. Like, the difference is insane. It is an insane difference. Then we're using Arcane Avenger, of course. Once again, if you're not using Arcane Avenger, take out Combat Discipline for another aura. There's no reason to use it. Moving on to our Peacemaker. This is a raw damage setup. So we're just pumping as much raw damage as possible because it has really low status chance, but we have a lot of bullets. So we're just doing as high damage as possible. This is kind of like Regulators is kind of death by 1,000 cuts. It's I mean, the damage isn't that low. It's like 250,000 a shot, but you are firing a lot of shots. It doesn't do as much damage as like a primary weapon or a secondary weapon would. Its main strength is that it doesn't have to be reloaded. It has an insane fire rate, and it has a yeah, it just doesn't. It's insane fire rate and never has to be reloaded. Getting into the mods, I have Gunslinger here. If I were to reforma this, I would actually put Anemic Agility in this slot. And then we got Creeping Bullseye. I don't really feel the fire rate difference from this, but I don't have a fully ranked Pistol Gambit, so it would only be like a little under 20% increase in critical chance. However, it's around almost a 50, like 47% decrease, and I'm just not willing to do that because it lowers our crit chance substantially. Prime Target Cracker, of course, for a lot of crit multiplier. Raw damage, of course, so we're using Pathogen rounds with Prime Convulsion so that we can get a lot of corrosive damage, and then Prime Heated Charge, Lethal Torrent for this fire rate, and Multi-Shot, and of course Galvanized Diffusion. Some modifications you could do to this is you could use Hemorrhage, because impact actually does proc a lot, and if you want to use a primer, you can use galvanized shot. You can build this into DOT as well if you want, and use pistol elementalist and just pump heat and status chance as much as you can. It fires incredibly quickly, so that 10% status chance is actually a lot more than it seems. Yeah, I think those are the only modifications I would make to this. Very notably, there's a reason why we're not using Hornet Strike with regulators, and that's because of how the damage multiplier works on regulators. So it gets two 150% additive damage multipliers just by activating it, and they scale with strength. On top of that, there's the multiplier from shooting gallery itself, so you get damage from that as well. And all of these scale additively with serration, so there's pretty much no reason to use this whatsoever. For our companion, back to him. So on Bippy, of course we have viral quills, of course. The most important mod here though for her is reinforced bond. It is 60% extra fire rate for our Peacemakers. And then we have tenacious bond, of course, for 1.2x extra critical damage. Then we have synth deconstruct so that we can make more health orbs, so that we are very comfy. Note about this build: if you don't have a purple Archon shard, out of the Archon shards, this is the only important one. This is kind of like not really invested in that much. These are normal. These are kind of just ones I had lying around. This one though, this one plus Nourish, which is our Helminth, pretty much makes it so we have infinite energy as long as we have some deconstruct on our companion. If you don't have a purple Archon shard, instead of Augur Reach, I would highly recommend you use Equilibrium. Alright, and for the incredibly optional, not needed whatsoever part of this build, we have Secondary Outburst. This is just a insane amount of critical chance and critical damage. I think is actually we can just see it right now. I just don't remember off the top of my head. It is at max. It is 240% critical chance and critical damage. So numbers can get kinda nutty. Yeah, guaranteed orange crits. I usually just keep it in my back pocket at 4x combo though. So it's like an 80% increase to critical chance and critical damage. If I were to do a change to this build though, I would use Praetos, because Praetos is really easy to build combo for, because you can just pick up ammo and get the combo for it, and has a large range. So if I were to do any changes to it, I would use Praetos instead of Ceramic Dagger. The Ceramic Dagger is nothing special, it's just a bunch of combo mods and then some range just in case I actually want to hit them. Nothing much going on there. I forgot to note that if you aren't going to be using this, you should use, on your melee, you should use the Ferox with the Amalgam Ferox body count. And that pretty much just allows you to get an extra 40% fire rate for your secondaries, and that affects Peacemakers. We're using Materia, of course, for extra casting speed, and for the strength buff. For your primary weapon, if you're using Ceramic Dagger, you can build up your combo with the primary weapon. This is Cedo. It's just my favorite weapon to use overall. However, you can, if you really just want to build up the combo on the Ceramic Dagger incredibly quickly, you can just use Torrid. Torrid is just, you know, a giant room nuke. Same thing for Ogress or Latron. You can just use hard meta shit in your primary just to kill shit as fast as possible. Pretty much anything works. However, I just tend to use my favorite weapons. That's pretty much the build. To the surprise of absolutely no one, Mesa is incredibly strong. This is my rendition on it. using mechanics that you probably already know about. They've been around the game for a while, however, I wanted to put my own spin on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a good day or night. Goodbye.